Okay.
Guys, welcome to Pick the Brain, episode number 6. Today we got Demetrius Romero on, former wrestler from Idaho, state champ from there. He's a Big 12 champ, All-American, wrestles at Utah Valley. So how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Getting right into it, I just wanted to ask about your background in wrestling and how you kind of got started within the sport. Coming from Idaho, that's not, at least for me, like I'm not very hip on the West Coast and like what states are big out there, but coming from Idaho, that's pretty rare. You only see a couple guys like doing well within the Division Ones that are from Idaho. So talk about your background in wrestling and how you got started.
Yeah. So my background in wrestling, I originally played football and basketball and ran track growing up. And then I had moved in with my dad. Me and my brothers had moved with my dad. And so when I got to high school, I was like, basketball's not really an option anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a buddy that wrestled, and when we played football together, he's like, "You got a good double leg. You should try wrestling." And so I just got into wrestling. Wasn't good at it at first. Yeah, I lost every match. And I think at that point, I had my first tournament, lost every match. And the way it made me feel, I was like, I never want to feel like that again.
Yeah.
Because I was usually good at excelling at sports. But then I just kept trying, and I had a good set of coaches. And so, like Kevin Wood was one of my high school coaches, Spence Patrick, Tyler Sherfy. And Tyler Sherfy was an All-American. Spence wrestled at Stanford, and Coach Wood wrestled at Boise State too. So I always had like college guys around me in the room.
Yeah.
They all just kind of pushed me to that level. I felt like one of the things I really loved about wrestling was that personal connection to like people in the community or your coaches, right? Because I was learning life skills outside of like just sports. I was learning how to be a good person, how to like work through like adversity, and it's the toughest sport that I've ever played. So like for that, I was just like, I took away a lot more than wrestling, and so I wanted to stay there.
Yeah, and so you said you started in 9th grade?
Mm-hmm.
So, which I didn't know that, so I'm going to just go ahead and break off the script a little bit. But I see a lot of guys, there's a lot of guys that will start in 9th grade or 8th grade or something like that, and they'll excel more than guys that started when they were 6 years old or 7 years old. Why do you feel that is? Do you feel like it's like, some guys burn out and then their career just like flattens out, or do you feel like something else played a role into you finding huge success within the sport and only starting within 9th grade?
I think like part of it is just I wasn't really specialized in a sport. Like with wrestling, if you wrestled from like a really young age, a lot of times that's all you did. And so, right, I had other sports that helped like improve my athleticism in different like modalities and made me better like side to side doing these things. But also I was still learning, and I wasn't really set in my ways. So when I was practicing something, learning it for the first time, if I wasn't picking it up, it was something I didn't know. I had like no knowledge of the concept of. So correcting it was easy compared to learning something and creating it into like a pattern that you do all the time. And then someone's like, hey, you're not doing it right. Or like, we need to alter some of these things. For me, that was easy to alter because I had like no base knowledge. And so I'm going off of what you're telling me. And so to make those changes was a little bit easier for me because I had to learn a single leg in high school. I had to learn a high crotch in high school. Everything was brand new.
Yeah.
So just to have like that higher level of coaching and learning it as I went, it just felt like my ceiling was higher because I didn't have no concept of like, I'm a good wrestler. I know what I'm doing. Just knew I was a wrestler trying to be the best I could be.
Yeah.
I hadn't had anything that like put me like above anyone that made me like great. And so I was trying to be great in high school. And there's a lot of kids that like state champs, national champs. They already know what it's like to be great at a certain level. And so when you don't allow yourself to learn and you're too good for learning, you become arrogant and you stop learning. So I felt like being in that position allowed me to learn.
Yeah, and then I just graduated last year. I wrestled Division II, but now I do coaching, and some things I'll see is like a huge factor I'll see a lot is like the ego of like a guy who won state. He might be 9 years old and he won state, and he's like, he might have had a different coach that got him there, and then I come in, I'm a new coach. Like they're not really like prone to listening to me versus like guys who are pretty green into the sport and haven't done it for that long, or guys who haven't accomplished great things like that. Those guys are willing just to like full send, like completely believe it, what I say, and like without question. So do you feel like that second one, you and like that, like a lot of why you had success, you would say, just like no ego, you don't have an ego?
Yeah, I definitely I might have an ego a little bit now, but but definitely when it comes to coaching, One thing I've always felt like really appreciative of just being in my position is like the trust I've had in all my coaches from high school to college. I've always trusted those people. I've trusted that they know probably a little more than me, and so I take that into account. And so doing the things they ask of me has been easier as compared to you're an all-star and I know more than my coach. You're not going to get super far with that mindset.
Yeah.
Be able to trust your coach is a big deal, especially if you're are you in Pennsylvania? Where are you at?
I'm in Missouri.
Missouri, okay. So
Yeah.
if you like get those big states like Pennsylvania where they're just making hammers in high school, you might come out of high school being like, my coach from high school knows more than my college coach.
Yeah.
And to have that mindset is not going to help you in any way.
Yeah, and then going off that, so you had obviously you won state within high school, so you were able to accomplish something great within the 4 years that you started. 3 years later, boom, you're winning state. Going off that, I saw that you actually committed to Boise State right out of high school, and you went there. So I want you to talk about that experience because for the audience watching, if you guys didn't know, Boise State cut their program, I think 2017, right? Or 16, 17, 16 or 17?
17, yeah.
Yeah, so talk about you just committing to Boise State, why you wanted to go there, and then once they cut, kind of your thoughts and feelings on, the decision there.
Yeah, so I committed to Boise State. A big part of it was like just being around like my community and having the people that were there in high school there for me and being able for them to come watch me wrestle. That was huge. And I definitely like loved the atmosphere and like the campus of Boise State because obviously I'm from there. And they were a powerhouse in wrestling at one point, so they still had good guys coming. But when they decided, so like that was a big like factor of committing. There's like I could be by my family. I'm gonna have good coaches. They have like guys like Jason Chamberlain, Hawkstrauss that are all Americans. They had like Gio Martinez, Steven Hernandez, Chris Castillo on the team where they're always wrestling at the NCAA tournaments, and that's around my weight. So I get those as training partners. So they had like a lot of good things to offer, plus like the college experience was pretty fun at State. Yeah. But when they dropped it, that was definitely hard because when they dropped it, I was actually with my dad. Like he was taking me out to eat for lunch one day. And I was like taking a nap in the car. He always listens to the sports radio for Boise. It was talking about all Boise State sports. And then it said something about how they like had dropped wrestling. Like, yeah, it's crazy they dropped wrestling. I like woke up out of my nap. I was like, what? What was that? And I turned it up. I started listening because I didn't really catch what it said. And it's like Boise State decided to drop the wrestling program. I remember like texting my teammates. I was like, I'm pretty sure the team just got dropped. I heard it on the radio. And then later on that day, they called everyone in and they're like, hey, like they just cut the wrestling program. That's like a pretty like, that hurt a lot just because, not the fact that they dropped it. I think they should have kept Boise State wrestling because of like just the dynasty they had built. And that was like one of the more successful sports. Yeah. But also like when you build like that camaraderie with your teammates, it puts a lot of other people in the position of like, what are we going to do now? And you have the option to go to school and stay there on your scholarship. But it's like, if you had like your goals to wrestle and go be an All-American and do this, like now you got to pack up your whole life and go somewhere else, even though you originally intended to stay here and try to do something great here. And just the way they did it was very like poorly done. I remember beginning of the year, beginning both my seasons there, they like someone would ask like, hey, I heard you guys are thinking about cutting the wrestling team. Is that true? And the AD like, no, we're not going to cut it. So they kind of just was gaslighting a lot of people, even though they had plans to do it. Yeah.
So like my buddy committed to Boise State. Well, he's actually my buddy because Boise State cut their program, and then he went to a different school. His name's Tyler Creeth. I don't know if you probably don't remember the far back, but he committed there. They dropped it, and when he said he went on his visit, he said he could just like feel like. Because this was like he graduated in 2017, so this was like right when he committed. They dropped it like days later. So he was on his recruiting visit, and he said just like the energy there just did not feel right. And they gave him good money, and like it's Division I school. They got good wrestling, so he took that opportunity. And that sucks. That he definitely said that was shitty for him too. And you guys not being able to know like before your dad's listening to a podcast radio show, and they're saying it on there, and then the coach is calling you in later. So clearly I'm guessing things just weren't right. And the communication between the coaches and the AD was probably a little messed up too by that point.
Yeah, I know Boise at that time didn't have the greatest AD, and they finally got him to step down, and they got a new AD. And so, yeah, I feel like even our coaches, they might have known, but I honestly feel like they kind of kept our coaches out of the loop in some types of way.
Yeah. Going off that though, so you made the decision to go to Utah Valley. So talk about. I want you to talk about the options you were looking at after they cut, maybe a couple of different options outside of Utah Valley, and then why you chose Utah Valley.
Yeah, so after they had dropped the program, I went on a couple of recruiting trips like Oregon State, NC State, UVU, obviously, because that was a school, UNC, and then I didn't go on any after that because I'd committed to UVU. But in high school, when I was going on recruiting trips, it came down to Boise State and UVU.
Oh, okay.
And the only thing that kept me, I wanted to go to UVU. I think I wanted to go to UVU first over Boise State because I really liked the coaches, especially Ethan Lofthouse. I really connected with him on my recruiting trip. I was like, okay, I think this person, like when I talk about like trusting a coach, like always having that in my life.
Yeah.
Like that was a big part to my development. Like my high school coach, Coach Wood, he helped me develop a ton, but I knew I'd developed so much because I trusted him. So I knew if he told me something, it wasn't like I had to think about what I was doing or question it. I just know he's probably telling me this because it's in my best interest. Mm-hmm. And really like kind of displayed that to me of like, you know, you could trust me. The things I'm telling you are the truth. And he made me feel like that. And all it came down to choosing Boise State over UVU was the fact that I'm close to the family and there's more money. And so, you know, at that point, it's like, what do? Do you leave family and go over here for less money, or do you come here and have this money, this scholarship, and have your family there? So it became, I didn't want to leave my family, and I had a better offer from athletics, so I chose Boise State. But when I chose UVU, I had already, like, when they dropped the program, when they originally fired our coaches at BSU after my first year, we got new coaches. Mm-hmm. I actually asked to be released. And I was actually thinking of transferring to UVU because I have two younger brothers, Andre Jones and Adrian Jones, that run track at UVU. So I was like, well, now I got family over there and I like the coaches. So I can go straight there and be like comfortable. I have a place to live. I don't really have to go make a ton of friends because I got my brothers. So it definitely worked out easier for my situation.
And then obviously UVU's worked out wrestling wise. You've done great things. You've beaten so many good names. I was looking at your roster. You beat Quentin Perez 14-4. I'm like, holy shit! Like this dude you've beaten some really solid names. And there's also guys that, you know, like some of the best wrestlers in the country right now, like that we look at, like you've wrestled them super tight, like, and you've also beaten some good guys. So I want you to talk about, just throughout your career, being in that big spotlight of like, you know, you're wrestling a super tough guy, whether he's ranked super high or has a lot of accolades, and things you noticed when you won what you did versus things you noticed when you lost what you did and with those tough matches.
Yeah. So like there's this in high school, I feel like I figured a lot of this out. But there's something my dad would always tell me, like when I knew I was having a hard time, like when he knew I had some tough competition. Because in Idaho, when I was there, we had my senior year, we had 5 All-Americans in my state championship bracket. Mm-hmm. And then Caden Tuma, he was like a 4-time national champion, both Greco and freestyle. And like Bryce Parsons, Ryan Klemp, which all Fargo All-Americans. So I was wrestling tough kids a lot there. My dad would always tell me, like, he's a man, you're a man. He puts his pants on the same way that you do. So, like, you don't have nothing to worry about. You don't have to be scared. Like, the only thing that could happen is you lose.
Yeah.
And when I did that in high school, I wrestled someone a little nervous. Then I lose, but it's like I didn't really learn in that match because, like, I limited myself. And so I got to a point where it's like, I'm just going to go out there and wrestle you to the best of my ability. And if you stop me, then I'm probably learning stuff as you're stopping me of like, oh, why can I finish this shot? And why can I get to this position? And so I wasn't really scared to like go out there and wrestle a tough guy because I was like, no, like he's no different than me. He might just be better in some aspects, might have more skills. But if I go and like give my best effort, I'm not wrestling to win. Mm-hmm. I'm wrestling to perform my best and like compete at my highest level. For me, it's like about competing. Like if I go out there and I give it my all compared to I'm wrestling to win, because when you wrestle to win, you protect the lead. Mm-hmm. I feel like you get shorthanded outcomes because you're protecting something instead of just letting it go and trying to have someone push you. So walking away from a match where it's a tight one and it was a good guy, I'm usually not really upset because I could walk away knowing like I gave it my all. But also as I know I gave it my all, I see a lot of stuff of like, okay, I could have done this in the match. Like if I would have taken this shot right here, I would have had a takedown. I just didn't open up because I was nervous and start like breaking down my wrestling from there. So it's not that I'm not wrestling. It's just I'm putting myself in those positions to learn.
Yeah. And I think,
Go ahead.
I think that's the common answer I've gotten. Like I've asked the same question to a couple different guys, and like a lot of these guys saying like, you wrestle to win or you wrestle not to lose, and you're protecting the lead. Like either you're going to win 2-1 and it's going to be boring, you're not going to learn a lot, or you're going to lose probably last seconds trying to protect the lead. And obviously like the big thing that's going around is like score points. So talk about how like you implement that mindset within your training, like at practice. Like, are you just like at practice, I guess, is your mindset like, I'm going to score as many points as I can today? And yeah, I guess what I'm asking is that, does that start at practice?
Yeah, it does. I think everything, like, you got to practice with the purpose in everything you do in life. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you practicing like this? What are you going to get from this? So if you're like, I want to be the greatest ever, or like the best at this facet of something, then you have to have that in mind and practice with that intent.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that means like you got to pay the piper of like, not taking shortcuts. So like that means, okay, to be the best, I got to have this type of cardio. So that means I win every rep. That means I need to go learn this shot. Then I'm incorporating those into my practice of like what I want to achieve. So like sometimes in practice, in college, I had a really good single leg. I do like a single leg people, and people start stopping my single leg because like he's only shooting his single. So we got to get a high crotch. So then I go into practice where I was like, I'm not even going to try to score off my single. I'm going to just try to get as many takedowns with my high crotch.
Yeah.
And I'm getting stuff. People are taking me down, and I don't really care if I get taken down in practice. It's practice. I'm here to like make mistakes. So that when I go there and wrestle, I don't make those mistakes. And you just figure it out. So just having that mindset, like I even feel in practice, a lot of people do wrestle their partners to win by a point. And I bet you've seen it in the room. It's like, I'm just trying to win this 7-minute go. And you can't really do that. It's like, I'm going to go wrestle you as hard as I can and put myself in these positions. And if I'm doing this, there might be days someone beats me because I'm taking a lot of risk and trying to learn things that, if I don't have the best knowledge, you're probably going to stop it until I figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that mindset. Just like continue, like, and especially at your level, dude, you're like wrestling the best guys. Like, dude, it's like the best guys in the world, almost comparably. NCAA folk style championships is almost as hard as like world championships. And I'm not trying to take anything away from that scene, but like you look at like the depth of these brackets. So it's like you have to continuously evolve because these high level coaches are taking your film from maybe a duel you had against Oregon State. And these guys are breaking you down every single time you wrestle. And so, like, I guess my question was going to be, like, what changes do you feel like you made to get you to that level? Do you feel like it's just evolving your game consistently?
Yeah, I'll definitely say evolving my game consistently. Also not having, like, little mental laps, like learning how to I think a thing people struggle with is learning how to wrestle, like, a whole college match. Without having to like take those little breaks or those little gaps in the wrestling. Even I struggled with when I first got in college. Like I could be beating someone and I got up and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to rest because I'm up a little bit. I'm going to get my energy back. And then all of a sudden someone's in on my legs and then we're wrestling. I get taken down, right? Learning how to not have those little gaps in your wrestling and then incorporating the hand fight. Hand fighting is extremely hard in college, in my opinion, compared to high school because it's not like you got a lot of touch and go. You actually have to get people out of position to get on the legs. And so working on that and then just always looking for something to improve on. I feel like after you get to a certain level, there's not a time you're going to be like trying to learn. There might be like one or two things you need to incorporate. So I went from like a single leg, developing a really good high cross to a reshot, and then working on top game. And my top game got really good by my junior year. But freshman, sophomore year, I didn't have a top game. That didn't exist.
Yeah.
And so it's just like honing in on like your deficits, like getting good enough to the point where I got this down. I know I could score against the best guys with this stuff. Okay, where are they going to stop me? And then put the focus into that and give it my all.
Yeah. And then moving away from the wrestling side a little bit, as I was going through, I'm seeing, I don't know if you went through 2 injuries in college or just 1.
2. I tore both my ACLs.
2. So, I mean, I can relate with you. I had torn my labrum and rotator cuff, and I had to get surgery. And so I already know that that's like a super tough process. I just wanted to hear about your process with dealing with injuries and, some of the struggles you faced throughout those processes.
Yeah. So obviously it's pretty hard to like be told like, hey, you can't do this for 9 to 12 months. And like, this is part of your livelihood. This is part of like your identity. That's hard. So I think part of the process for me and like trying to deal with this is investing myself in other areas of my life. Like for me, like, right, I got hurt, but then I was in my master's for marriage and family therapy. So I was like, okay, I know I can't wrestle, but I could put a lot of my time into focusing on grades, getting good at this, and becoming a good therapist. Mm-hmm. But then I was like, I know I can't wrestle, but I could put more of my time in helping my teammates and maybe watching some of their wrestling and telling like, hey, maybe work on this. Because even though I started realizing, like, even though I can't wrestle, by watching film and breaking down wrestling and trying to help someone else and explain it to them, I'm actually learning how to wrestle better without even having to do it.
Yeah.
So I think trying like just to reinvent myself as a different person. I know it sucked. Like it sucked and it's not talking bad about my teammates, but it sucked having to be out of door and just like sit there like, I can't even compete. I just got to watch them compete, and then there's like stuff you want them to do and you can't do it. Mm-hmm. But do this, and like it's just hard to be in that position.
Yeah.
Like, just finding other areas of your life you could focus on. Or finding ways that you could still like contribute to the process of like the team, because a lot of times it's like your season ends and you're like, oh, everything's done for. Like I come back next year and that's it. But that's not the case. Like you could help your teammates. You could still be a part of that team in some types of way. Yeah. And so figuring out like your position and your role. I know one thing that sucked is like I didn't really take a leadership role my injury years because I felt like, you know, to be a leader, you got to lead from the front and do those things and show your teammates. I couldn't do that on the mat. Mm-hmm. So I wanted the role, like, if you need help, come ask me. I'll help you out and break some stuff down. If you want me to watch some of your film, I'll watch your film and give you feedback, and just find other areas that I could be beneficial. And that, you know, even though I couldn't wrestle that year, I'm still like a person outside of wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how I felt. And when I like went through it, it just was bad timing for me because I got my surgery and then like COVID happened and stuff like that. So I was really, really stuck. But I dealt with a lot of like, it was like probably the hardest time in my life, just like mentally and emotionally for me. So I want you just to talk about maybe like, I'm guessing you probably went through hardships like mentally and emotionally through those times, just being ripped away from the sport that, you know, you do at a very high level. Talk about that, but talk about how it helped you grow as a person.
Well, I think a big way it helped me grow is like part of like I felt like the hardest part about going to like hardships is like facing some of the hard facts about yourself and like accepting some of your feelings about the situation and what you're going through. And I know like when I first got hurt, I remember like texting my coach, like I was all like mad and irritated about like what I was going through and then like the performance of the team. But then I realized like I'm upset because of like what I'm going through, and I'm trying to like take this blame or take this feeling and put it on other things in my life of like this is like this because of this. When the reality of the situation, I'm just hurt and I feel these ways. And so kind of looking back in to yourself and like making sure you're okay and looking at the mental part. But also I think when you have like you probably felt this, when you have like a season ending injury, you get like a whole year to kind of sit down and then put your goals into perspective, and you get to look at it from a standpoint of like, okay, like I know what it's like not to have this. Like when you have something important taken away from you, then it makes it easier to go harder and achieve goals because you know it's like you know it's like to have it one day and not have it the next day.
Yeah.
You know what it's like to have something taken away from you. And so that feeling helped me a ton because then coming to the next year, I was like, well, I got to make this count because if I get hurt, that's it for me.
Yeah.
Start making those little moments count and you make the little things of like, you know, does that mean going to bed on time? You know, does that mean staying after to learn some technique, the stuff that you might have not been doing because you're just in the moment? And when, you know, wrestling, when you're in the moment, it's hard. It's a grind.
Yeah.
And so you might look at these things like, I just want to relax. I just want this. But you get that outside point of view of like, okay, if I don't have this, right, being in the moment and embracing it and enjoying it gets a lot easier. And so that's what I mean, out of that, I was like, it's a lot easier to embrace it and just be okay with the process and how I feel and how I work through these things.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of you saying season's a grind, I mean, I definitely can agree, but I can't agree to the level because I'm not flying on planes across the country, you know, doing all over the place. But I'm still cutting weight on buses, like driving and stuff like that. So a big thing about this podcast is I really want to pass down at least some information to some of these high school kids. And they're not clueless and about it, but I think that like you only get a real perspective when you go through something or you hear people just genuinely talking about it. Maybe you don't even get that real experience, but at least they could hear a little bit about it. But talk about just the grind of the college season and just some traits that it takes someone to become successful within college wrestling. Because it's not just about good at wrestling. You have to be doing all the right things outside of the room too, or you're gonna feel like shit on match day, or you're gonna feel like shit on tournament day. And you have one bad match that could ruin your ranking, that could ruin a seed, that could ruin a draw. So talk about that.
Yeah, so I remember like one of my most like vivid experiences in college wrestling is like my first like 2 weeks on campus, and when I actually started like training at the college level with everyone. I remember like getting in my car after practice and sitting there like, I don't know how I'm going to do this for 4 years, because that was such the difference between high school to D1 for me. It felt like I was like I got out of practice, be like shaking in my car still from the workouts.
Yeah.
Like, take like a little nap before I drove home so I didn't fall asleep driving home. Eat. And a lot of times it's like takes picking up these good habits. I think one thing I realized is that, right, the way that we train and we approach practice is going to correlate to the way that we approach school. So if you approach school and you do all the right things in school, get all your assignments in, you go to your work, ask everything that's expected of it, do it the right way, you put your best foot forward, same in your social life, and then into your wrestling life, I think all those things correlate. So it's hard to be a good wrestler, and I'll say, like, even the best wrestlers in the country, I feel like, are all pretty well-rounded. You got to well-round yourself in all areas of your life, because to train on that schedule and maintain grades and do all these things, you got to have balance. And you're struggle if you're like, I want to go to college, party all the time, go to school. Like, where are you going to make time for wrestling or this and that? Finding like a system that works for you is really important. And what I realized is there's a lot of sacrifice. I went through like my redshirt year having fun, and then not meeting my goals, and then not meeting my goals again. And I'm like, okay, what things in my life do I have to give up? And being a young college kid, 18, 19 years old, you want that experience, but sometimes you got to realize sometimes that experience might come at hand as like the sacrifice to have this experience might be to not be an All-American, might be a lineup. And so putting that into perspective of like, what is like at the end of the day, what do I want to do with myself and how does that look? And if this is my goals, how do I get there? And really mapping that out. I think that's one thing our coaches have been really well at. It's like, okay, tell us what you want. And you tell them what that you want, and they'll be like, okay, let's map this out. How are you going to get there? And putting those into place, because, when you first get to college, every parent hates it. My parents did. They're like, you're going to go wild when you get to college because it's your first time out of the house. You got to rein that in and then find a way to balance everything in your life and always put your best foot forward. I think with training's hard because it's hard to get in a room and just learn to push yourself harder than everyone else and put yourself in those positions. Like, when you're tired, you want to take reps off, learning to find a way mentally to push yourself through that rep.
Yeah. And one important thing that I think that you said is just like finding that trade-off, because everything in life is a trade-off. Like, you do this, you lose that. Like, you're doing something, you're going to sacrifice something else. And that's something definitely that I struggle with too. Like, I agree with you. Like, just finding the trade-off of, okay, it's like, do you want to be a national champ or do you want to be the badass party dude that all the girls, like, that everybody knows, And it's like, you have to make the choice there. And there are people that like are very high performing athletes in high school and they come into college and it's just like this college life, this college grind of wrestling is just not for them. And, but yeah, I love that about just like everything's a trade-off and balance too.
Yeah, I definitely say listen to our parents. As I got older, a lot of stuff my parents have said to me were true. I didn't really believe it, but it's hard. You're figuring out yourself your first couple of years in college, figuring out which way you want to take things. And so it's definitely hard to like figure that out at a young age.
And some, as I was going through on your Instagram bio, you have family and marriage therapist. You got your master's in that. So talk about that. And you talked about off your injury, how you became a little bit more passionate about that. So talk about that route in your life and how you came about finding that that's going to be your passion or that's what you want to do.
Yeah. And so, I think part of my passion relates back to my family and like also wrestling. So like one thing that my family always showed me growing up is like if someone's in need of help or you could help someone and make their day better, like you need to help those people regardless of what they're going through. You don't know their situation. So like one time I remember being at like a football game and it was raining outside and my dad had like his favorite like Georgia hoodie on and there's not a hoodie and my dad's like, here, have my hoodie. And she's like, really? Like, yeah, have my hoodie. It's fine. And he didn't ask for it back. And he's like, you don't know. Like, maybe she doesn't have hoodies, or maybe she, like, that's the warmest piece of clothing that she could have. So I helped her. And my coaches were the same way. My high school coach would be like, he did like hospice. And so he'd like take us to help him out with some of his patients and be like, hey, come help these people. Let's do. So I always had people that were helping around me. So I was like, I know I want to help someone. And then when I got to college, I kind of chose the social work route. And it kind of had my, like, it was cool and whatever, but I felt like a lot of people that you deal with in social work didn't necessarily want to help themselves. Yeah. So I wanted to get into a position of, like, how can I help other people? I know I like coaching high school kids, but a lot of the kids that came to me to be coached, they want to be coached and get better. And then therapy kind of, when I started, like, looking more into it and exploring it, I realized, like, these people are paying a lot of money to come here, but they also want to help themselves. So by me helping them help themselves, it's going to create a good, like, outcome. It's the same with teams. I think for a team to function correctly, the coaches want to help us succeed, but everyone else has to be, like, bought into their own plan of, like, how they want to succeed. So they want to help themselves just as much as the coaches want to help us, and we work together and do it collaboratively. And kind of like the same dynamic to me that therapy is. It's like, you want help. I might be able to help you solve some of your answers, but you got to be willing to do it yourself.
Yeah. And what was the undergrad you got?
I got my undergrad in behavioral science with the emphasis studies.
So when you're going through your MBA and stuff like that, because I love psychology. I'm so pissed that I studied business in college, but I didn't even minor in psychology. I love just, like, you know, people's brains and, like, the way people work. I think it's super interesting. So just talk about, like, you know, maybe workshops or different things that you did that you found interesting within that MBA that you can remember and that, like, that you still use today. Maybe you're going to use for your clients, or maybe you use for the team, or maybe you use with your relationships in your own life. So yeah, talk about that.
Yeah. I feel like we've learned a lot of, like, things regarding this, but I think one thing I've learned is just the way to work with people. I feel like psychology kind of, like, one thing I realized about myself just from my undergrad and my master's is that sometimes I think my way is right, and this is how you got to do it. But I've also learned that, you know, I could have the right way, but you could also have the right way that works for you, and that's totally fine. And we got to accept that and kind of applying that to my clients of, like, I'm going to help you in a way that I know will help you, but it might not help me. And I'm okay with that because that might be what's right for you. Same with the team. Like, we help our teammates in the ways that they need. Like, if you need to be, I like tough love. Like, give it to me straight. Some people don't like that. And if I gave it to someone straight that didn't like that, that's probably not beneficial to their growth. And so realize people come from different backgrounds, and we all have things that work for us and that don't, and taking that to account that we're all very different individuals, but we could work together if we could see that our differences aren't reasons to dislike each other.
Yeah, dude, that is facts. What you just said, dude. I love that. But anyways, that's all I got for you within the podcast. If you guys want to ask questions real quick, we'll take some questions. I saw one in here. I know your family's in here. I saw your mom comment. Mom, bro, reminding me of my mom. But anyways, so what are some things that you can do with a low single, or things that you've been, you know, just some, like, techniques or things that you can do with a low single? Maybe that's, like, setups or finishes. I don't know if he's asking, like, what he's really asking, but just maybe just talk about setups or finishes, or just what things can you do with a low single? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I just say with the single, right? I think a big part of learning how to get to the shot is one of the biggest things. And one thing that I'm really big on is just not resting your hands in the hand fight so they can't feel when you're coming. And so if I don't rest my hands, like, move them consistently, when I, like, release and feel pressure to my shot, then it's going to be harder for them to read me. I think the biggest thing on any shot that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially high schoolers, is coming to your feet after every shot. We see that a lot of people stay on the mat, but 90% of the time when we come to our feet and we drive through the shot and finish up high, even if you shelf it on your leg, you should be coming all the way up and finishing it in a high position. So I think that's a big thing. And then not being scared to go into the body, right? A lot of times we shoot our single and people hurt their shoulders because they, like, pop their shoulder out because they don't want to, like, body them up with their body. You know, we could use our body and push into their body and just get strong on the single leg. So I just say where your hands are, if you're constantly moving your hands, getting to the leg and driving through it to our feet, and not necessarily letting our shoulders slip out to kind of take the sprawl, like the pressure of the sprawl off of us.
And that was my next question too, because that was something that I figured out in college, because single leg was like my main shot. And like throughout kids club and throughout high school, like all the coaches I would go to would have finishes like from down low. So I never really brought it up a lot. And then I got lazy, like with my drilling. I'm like, I'd rather just finish low if I know how to finish low rather than bring that up and like but I would say like a couple years in college, I'm like, dude, I cannot finish low on like really good guys. And my coach is like, bro, you just have to start bringing every shot up. Like you lock your hands, you bring it up to their feet. And that was something that I picked up in a single leg. And talking about like the evolution of wrestling, like it's almost freaking impossible, especially the guys that you're going to be wrestling this year. Like it's almost impossible to finish down low because of just the evolution of wrestling and like the scrambling within, that position. So just talk about like, I guess like adjustments that you've had to make the last question, just adjustments you've made along the way as like wrestling has evolved, like how you've dealt with guys who are really good at scrambling through positions. Talk about talk about technique there, like just scrambling the way wrestling's evolved and how you've handled that because you like to attack and take shots.
Yeah. So like one thing with scrambling, like you said, is like, I know if someone gets on my legs and I can keep it on the mat, I'm going to make you work to take me down. If not, get my hips away. So if you get a takedown, you're going to be pretty tired. And going into my shots, I know if I don't come to my feet and I let someone keep me on the mat, that we're actually like a 50-50 position. So we're about to wrestle each other pretty hard. So some of the adjustments was, I thought I was pretty small. I didn't think I was as strong as everyone when I got to high school or to college. And so I would only want to hit shots where I didn't have to use a lot of my body. And I didn't want to deal with someone's weight. So getting to the point where I get on the leg and I'm not scared to suck it to my chest and use my head to push to come to my feet was huge. I think a big part too was, like I said earlier, is good guys. A lot of times we shoot straight on. We learn our like a little post, our little snaps, or our pulls to our shots. And in reality, that's not how it's gonna go. Like the very basic concepts of wrestling. Now we got to take those concepts and kind of tie it into our style, like how we move our body and how we wrestle and create angles. So It's good to know those things, but we got to move. And I think a lot of our shots and how we score actually start in our feet. Like I'm creating angles with my feet when I'm hand fighting. I'm not keeping it in one spot. When I snap and move my hands, my feet are moving. And so I'm getting you to open up more and try and post on me. So like even if I'm shooting with an angle, I know you got to square up and then you can give me hips before you can give me hips. So I'm trying to take your hips out of the equation. Instead of straight to the leg and getting straight hips. I think one thing in college I did was like I knew I had a good single, and I could get to the leg and I could get to the leg, but I got sprawled on a lot. And so I was like, I got to get an angle so when I get to the leg, they got to square up with me and I could wrestle.
That's such a great way to put it. And I think a lot of people neglect hand fighting within drilling, especially at the youth level. Like I'm sitting here trying to teach, like I'll sit here and try and teach 9 and 10-year-olds like different ways to move guys, like whether that's a snap or like grab an elbow control or kind of pushing in with the forearm or whatever. Like, and a lot of them just don't see like the purpose because they see wrestling as I shoot and I score and then I get on top and I turn. Like there's no breakdown or there's no hand fight or there's no snap. And then you got to get to like a reshot off that snap. You got to be moving your feet. And I think like from a youth level, like a lot of these guys aren't really learning this kind of like technique until, for the average wrestler until college, like, or until high school, really, like if they have good coaches. But I think hand fighting is like one of the most important things and something that like if you can do really well at in high school, you'll get a lot of looks.
Yeah, and it's really important. It's definitely like a hard concept to learn too, and it's a hard concept to teach. Like it's hard to teach, like this is how I hand fight, because part of hand fighting to me is a feel thing.
Wait, what's up?
It's part of hand fighting to me. It's a feel thing of like how this person is pushing into me and what I do to react to the feel.
Yeah, it's all reactions and like, you're never going to get the same feel. And like, I guess that's why I probably struggle with teaching it because I'm like thinking of all the feels that I know in my head. And these guys are sitting here like, I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. So I guess that's probably where I'm struggling there. But I got one. Here's another one, actually. I'll take this one too. Tell them your thought process going into overtime.
Oh yeah. So my thought process going into overtime. Usually I go off the thought process like I've wrestled this whole match hard and held this pace.
Uh-huh.
And so by the time we go into overtime, usually I could look at the person across from me and I know if I'm tired, that you're significantly tired or tired than me because I've worked pretty hard this match. I've conditioned myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not necessarily scared to go score because I think, being tired, right? Feeling that pain of like, oh, I'm exhausted, it makes like a coward out of a lot of men. It's like, we don't like feeling that way. No one likes feeling that way. So the moment you get pushed there, I think that's really like what shows character in a person of like how I'm going to wrestle when I'm tired. Because everyone cuts corners when they're tired. When a job gets hard, we see it at work. If a job's hard and we're getting tired of this job, we might shortcut it.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that if I put you in this position, I know you're tired. I know I ran these sprints, won every sprint, pushed myself as hard as I can in practice. I've been here and I know what that feels like. So I'm not going to act on this as compared to, I'm assuming that most people I wrestle are going to act on the way they feel. And I know if I put you there, I've made you tired because I'm used to just putting myself in that environment.
Yeah.
I'm scared to go for it.
Yeah. That's facts, bro. Thank you so much for coming on, dude. It's been an honor talking to you. You've definitely got a lot of great stuff to pass down. I hope that we can get a lot of views within the YouTube video and the clips because I know there's a lot of good stuff within this. And when I watch it back, it's gonna be awesome. But Demetrius Romero, Pick the Brain, episode 6. Thanks for coming on, bro. Good luck this season. I'll be following you. Hopefully, I really want to have a lot of repeating guests. So like go in, get some big wins or whatever, and then talk about like maybe mid-season. Or maybe early on after a couple tournaments or duels, have you back on. It's been a pleasure talking to you, bro.
Hey, thank you for having me, bro.
No problem. Later. Have a good one.
Hey, you too.